Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Your City, Your County. My name is Bob Gray, and I'm very glad that you came to join us today. Also joining us today is Scott Feldt, who's the Kewaunee County Administrator. Scott, good to have you with us.
Bob, nice to see you again.
Always nice to have you here as one of our guests. Now, I understand that the taxes will be coming out soon, and quite obviously that means that the county budget has been passed.
Correct. I know no one's is happy ever to see a tax bill, but the county provides, as well as the local governments, provide some very important services. So that's what the taxes help to pay for. On November 5th, so Tuesday of last week, the county board passed the 2020 county budget. I can probably run down some numbers if you'd like.
Sure.
For those of you at home, I guess get a pad and piece of paper, a pad of paper and a pencil now. But the total budget for 2020 is approximately $22.5 million. So that's all expenditures. Now, that's not what we pay in taxes. The tax levy, or what people pay in taxes, is roughly $12.36 million. That's what's paid in property taxes. Now, that's an increase from last year of 2.24%. But so on the other side, the tax rate as to what you pay against the value of your property, that actually went down 2.34% from $7.25 per thousand to $7.08 per million. Now, some would say, how can the levy go up and the rate go down? And the main reason for that has to do with equalized value. So the value of all the property in the county went up from $1.67 billion to $1.75 billion, and that's an increase of approximately 4.74%. Now, I want to be careful in the respect that rates will vary depending on which municipality you live in. The 7.8 mill rate is across the entire county from an equalized value standpoint. But that mill rate will change slightly depending on what township or village or city you may live in.
And also the school district, too.
Correct, exactly. So we have, but from a total budget standpoint, actually our total budget decreased from last year by over $200,000. So the county continues to try to be very mindful of costs and that effect on property owners and taxpayers. As for our staffing actually decreased by a little over a half a position. Staffing is determined by what are called FTEs, or full-time equivalents. So if you had two people that worked half-time, that would be one full-time equivalent. So last year, the staffing level was approximately 146.34 roughly FTEs, and now it's down to 145.8, or basically a half a position. Another thing that counties look at, which is very important, has to do with net new construction. In other words, homes being built, buildings being built, buildings being expanded. And for our budget year, that net new construction is 1.077%. Now that is below the state average, and we want to continue to try to foster more development, more homes, more expansion in that respect in our county. And we can do that without having to take up more farmland. We can do that within the cities, within those villages, and have more of those homes being built and buildings being expanded, and that will help the county from a revenue standpoint. So as for the budget, the staffing, and that, I think we're sitting fairly well. We're not grossly increasing. We're continuing to try to find savings. We always run up against state levy limits, which makes our job challenging, but I think the county did an excellent job in trying to identify and fund what are the current needs, but also look at what the future needs will be a few years from now, of which, go ahead.
I have one question for you, and this one is the one that kind of pops into my mind. You say that the budget is like 22 million, something like that.
Correct.
And, but we're only doing the 12 million out of.
So let's call
real
it half,
estate.
right?
Yeah, half. Okay, where's the other half?
Where's the other half coming from? That's an excellent question. It's a variety of different things. Probably a large portion of it has to do with state and federal aid. So our Human Services Department, which provides a lot of services to our most needy in our county, they provide that, but then the federal government through Medicaid will reimburse us for those costs. For our highway, for the county. The state provides us a certain amount of money of state highway aid every year to address our county highways, but also to do the maintenance of the state highways that are within our county. And then there's fees. If you're going to go get a marriage license, if you're going to have a walkover fee for farmland preservation, you need a copy of a death certificate. There's a variety of different fees and charges that the county will place upon the public for those services as well. So your big three come down to property taxes, what are called intergovernmental aids, which are the state and federal aids, and then charges and fees for services. Those are your main ones. Some smaller ones come to interest income from the investments or money that we hold, as well as if we sell equipment or sell land, there's some of those proceeds as well. But again, the vast majority is property taxes, intergovernmental aids, and fees and charges for services.
Okay, very good. And I suppose you have kind of a rainy day fund there somewhere too.
Well,
under
that
right?
we have kind of a general fund. We don't have specifically a rainy day fund itself, but what we've been trying to do over the course of time is, because rainy day funds or general funds, most people would be thinking, well, why do you need to keep any extra of my money?
Sure.
Well, there's a couple different reasons why. One has to do with is if we have to borrow into the future, we can use some of that money that we've saved, but probably more importantly is that Moody's, Standard & Poor's, debt rating agencies, that if you have to borrow money, look at what your general fund is and how you're managing your money. So part of your debt rating comes from how much money do you have? Is it a sufficient amount if you had a downturn in the economy? So those types of things are very important for when we need to issue debt. Those debt ratings mean that we don't have to pay as much in interest because we've been prudent in our financial management prior to asking for debt.
Okay. I know I've heard of Mr. Moody. I've never met Mr. Moody.
I have not met or Standard or Poor's.
No, I don't know any of those
Yes,
people. And
exactly.
yet, here they are involved with what we're doing.
Correct.
I understand that there's some other parts of the budget that we haven't talked about yet, having to do, for instance, with the jail study. We're still
Correct.
studying that.
Oh,
right?
and we want to be very methodical about this. Why? Because to give an update, we've completed phase one, and phase one gave a general idea as to what's the current condition of our facilities, and is that sufficient? And if it's not, what is the general idea as to the amount of beds we would need 20 years into the future? Currently, we have 22 cells. That is not sufficient. Our average daily population is closer to 40. Our consultant had come out, and so 20 years from now, we foresee the need of close to 80 beds. So currently, we don't have enough beds to house our current population. In fact, we have to send some of those folks, depending to other counties, and pay $55 a day. while that doesn't seem like a lot of money, that adds up very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And if they're out there for any length of time, or if you
Correct.
have a lot of people out there.
correct. So phase 2 of the jail study, which we began in September, is looking at jail space or programming space. How much space is needed for housing of inmates? How much space is needed to book people into the jail? How much is needed for laundry and for kitchen? How much is needed for program space, which is required? How much is needed for maintenance areas, for evidence, for those types of things, as well as if we're doing a law enforcement center, how much space is needed for the sheriff's office, their offices, and their support. There's even some discussion about, do we need to look at other considerations? There are a number of other counties that what they do is they put their jail, their sheriff's office, and their court system all into one area, and the reason why is it helps to reduce the cost of moving prisoners to court. So if a jail is in one location and a court is in another location, then sheriff's deputies have to transport that prisoner or prisoners from the jail to a secure site within the courthouse, and then to the courtroom. And that can be very expensive. If you have the court system adjacent where the jail is, then moving that prisoner becomes much less costly. So those are some things to look at.
I'm sure also that it provides more security. Obviously, if you have a dangerous individual that you're moving from one spot to another, it's going to be a whole lot easier to walk them down a hallway.
Correct.
Than to put them in the car and
Take them out of the car and then
Yes.
move them through another hallway.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The other thing that phase 2 is looking at is it's looking at not just the programming of space, but also where we would put such a facility. Do we put it at its current location, or do we have a brand new location that would be more conducive to that design? What we have done, we've had the jail study committee, or the public safety facility committee, is composed of public members, of county board supervisors, and of county staff. And to get a better idea, we've done some tours as well. We've toured the facilities in Green Lake County. We've toured the facilities in Oconto County and in Door County, and looked at what things worked well for them, what things did not work so well. If there were changes that they could make, what would those be? And so we're starting to have some of those discussions as well, because this is a building that is going to last for decades. So the real difficulty is there are immediate needs that need to be addressed, and there are future needs that are going to be addressed. And we know of some of them, but we don't know necessarily to what degree. But the toughest part is this: you have a building that is not going to be cheap, but you want to build it right, and you need to build in, and I mean this, you need to build in excess capacity. Why? Because if this building is going to last for 20, 30, our current one lasted for 60 years, 50, 60 years, is then what has to happen is you have to allow for growth within that building. And so when you first build such a building, the first criticism is going to be, oh, you built it way too
this
big.
building is huge.
Right,
What are
it's
you going
way
to do
too
with
big.
all of that?
What do you need with that office? What do you
Yes.
need with that space? And
Certainly.
what it is hard to realize is that as time goes on, the county gets bigger. More staff is more than likely needed. Or, for that matter, rules change where, I'm sorry, no, you are mandated to put them into jail. Not you can let them go out. There are different things like that the rules will change, and therefore change how you have to operate. So you're trying to kind of put on your Swami hat and predict what that building is going to look like and what it needs.
Next time I want to see your Swami hat.
Yeah, well, I'll leave that to others.
Okay.
I'll leave that to Johnny Carson, the great Karnak.
I did read recently that you're taking a second trip down to Green Lake County. Any reason? Is that like, wow, this is the place that we want it to look like?
Some people weren't able to make that first trip.
Okay.
And so what we're trying to do is for some of those folks on the committee that could not make the first trip down to Green Lake, that we're allowing them the opportunity to come and take a look at the facilities there. They're one of the newer facilities within the state, and they're close by. Green Lake has a population very similar to ours, so therefore this is a good example or a template to possibly look at as to what things we would want to copy and what things we may want to change. But we want to give the entire committee that opportunity to see all three facilities.
Okay. Well, it sounds good that you're going around to see different people and
Absolutely.
find out what might work best. Getting back to the budget a little bit, which obviously the jail study falls under that, how is the county website coming along?
Well, what we're going to do is, it was a couple years ago that we took over and revamped the tourism website of visitkewaunee.com, but the current county website has been dated for a long time. It's currently hosted by the state of Wisconsin, and the state of Wisconsin prefers not to be in the website hosting business. And I think, and there are a number that also believe that the county needs to revamp its website. There's a number of different things going on, whether it's tourism, what's going on in public health, or the Register of Deeds office, or the administrator's office. Where's there an easy place to get the budget? Where's an easy place to get reports from public health or from human services, and just know what services are available? So we're going to put out a request for proposals, RFP, in 2020 to start to have someone come in and redo our website and make it much more navigable and easier to find information, as well as allow for more information. One of the bigger things is, in this day and age, when you're asking for information, at times files become very large. Or for that matter, if you want to put up a video. Well, currently, the website as we have it and hosted as it is, it's very difficult for us to put any type of video up on a website. And so to be able to provide more information to the public, we need to reconfigure and redo our website. So that's what the plan is for 2020.
Well, that sounds like fun. That'll give you something to think about for the future,
It'll be a
too.
lot of work, but I am extremely confident that our public information officer, Jennifer Gonzalez, she is top-notch. She is more than up to the task.
Great. We'll count on that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, falling under the budget, too, is I've noticed that the VIP, or the Violence Intervention Project, is part of your budget. Can you explain a little more about that?
Sure. There's a couple different organizations, Violence Intervention Project, or VIP, and KCEDC, which is the Kewaunee County Economic Development Corporation. Those are two organizations that the county provides some financial support. And there's always at times a little bit of discussion as to whether we should be providing support to organizations that are not part of county government, and if we do, at what level. And so what we've done for the last few years is continue to fund them at their current levels. We've had some discussions with KCDC about their funding levels and encouraging them to bring in some more private investment. VIP provides some services that, as the county, we feel it's better that a private entity do that. Violence intervention usually has to deal mostly with domestic violence, and so we would prefer that kind of be out of the county's purview. And Violence Intervention Project, which has been here for almost 30 years, in fact, they're having a gala fundraiser I believe, in just a few weeks. So they've been a part of the county and providing services, and they do an excellent job.
Good. Well, how about refinancing the debt in 2022?
Certainly. What we've done is the county's been very good at continuing to whittle away its debt. We currently have less than $11 million of outstanding debt. And some people say, well, $11 million sounds like a lot of money. And it is. But from a legal standpoint, we have less than, that's less than 15% of our debt capacity. In other words, we could issue debt for a sizable amount more than what we already have out there. But we want to be prudent about the debt that we have and the debt that we're going to bring in. So the current debt that we're looking at replacing in 2020, the interest rates are higher. Think of it like refinancing your mortgage. If your mortgage is at 4.5% and the rates are now at 3% or 3.25%, and therefore you can save money over the life of your mortgage, more than likely you will refinance that mortgage and save yourself the cost of paying that additional interest. This is very similar to what we're doing here. We don't have to pay as high of an interest, so therefore that cuts our interest costs, which means that's less money that taxpayers have to pay for our debt. So
And makes this Moody fella and Mr. Standard and Mr. Poor happy too. I'm sure.
Exactly. Well, for them, they just get to do the ratings, and
Okay.
as for it's the bankers and some of those folks that may not be as happy because if we're refinancing it, we're not paying them as much as what we originally were going to do. But that's still a better situation for us, and they're still receiving some interest income because of it.
Right, and working with government in the past, I've run into situations where one debt may come to an end.
Correct.
And you say, but we want to spend on something else, so you can keep it very smooth and flat. Because this one debt's ending and you're picking up maybe a new debt at that point.
Correct. And if we're looking to the future, and let us be honest and upfront, the likelihood of the county constructing a new public safety facility, a jail, and sheriff's offices and the like, is very likely, which means that is going to be a sizable debt issue. I do not have a specific number because we're not even close to that point yet, but it is going to be in the millions. So therefore, we're wanting to make sure that we're paying off as much debt as possible prior to then, so that way we're not just continuing to add debt onto the county, and instead making sure that we're trying to be prudent with the debt that we issue.
Okay, let's move on to broadband. Let's make it exciting.
Okay.
Broadband is always exciting.
Broadband. Well, if you remember a year ago, I had put in the budget that I wanted $1 million to be allocated towards broadband.
I remember.
And the board was a little hesitant of that, and they pulled that back and left it to the side, which is absolutely fine. But what the chairman did, which was very wise on his part, is he created a broadband study committee, and that began in January. And so what we started to do is the committee started to educate itself as to what is meant by broadband, what are we talking about from internet, who are the providers, how much access, and are there ways that we can get better broadband service to the county. Well, I'm happy to say that I think that we are close, because we've received some presentations from providers about ways that they can improve broadband or internet access to the rural areas, that's the townships, and try to do that. So we believe that the committee has made a recommendation to the executive committee, and the executive committee will determine that if they accept that recommendation, and then the county will work with that provider to not only implement the plan or the proposal, but also look at trying to find grant money to help offset some of those costs as well. Now, this, I want to be very clear, this does not in any way, shape, or form say that now people are going to get free internet. That is not the case.
Nothing's for free.
Correct. Nothing's for
No
free.
free lunches.
And this is a private business that is providing this service. And I've never heard of a private business that is going to give free, free service for any extended period of time.
Right.
So, but I'm very encouraged in the respect that if we can do what the proposals say, that we can help to provide better internet access into the rural areas in the next few years. Again, I also want to be clear that some of this has geographic restrictions. If you're in a valley and covered by trees, the likelihood of you getting a stronger signal is less likely than if you're up on a flat piece of land with no trees around you to basically block those signals. So again, this, just like with cell service, there's no guarantee of 100% connectivity. There's also there's no guarantee of 100% accessibility for every single person in the county. A lot of that will again depend on where they live, the geography, the topography, and where those towers or where that fiber may be placed. But it's still very encouraging.
It's a good step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And I know that it affects real estate, it affects where people move, it affects the economy, it affects a lot of people.
Well, and I think what some folks are thinking is that, well, if someone wants it, they could just pay for it. And that is partially true, but I'd like to label it a different way. I consider broadband or internet access to be the fourth utility. No one buys a house anymore that doesn't have electricity. No one buys a house anymore that doesn't have some type of water and sewer. No one buys a house anymore that doesn't have gas or electric or some type of heat. And in the modern times, more and more people are not going to buy a house if it does not have broadband or internet access. So to me, it has become the fourth utility where it is now an expectation. People, if they're going to live somewhere, they have the expectation that they are going to be able to access the internet. No different than for those people that have a cell phone, that they have the expectation that no matter where they are, they should be able to place a call.
I remember as a kid reading in history at that point about the Tennessee Valley Authority, where they were bringing electricity to areas that were in rural America, and thinking, boy, that's pretty neat.
Correct.
Well, this is probably about the same concept.
This is very similar, yes.
Yes. And that brings us to one more topic, a little bit about housing. I know a number.
Do you know a little bit about housing, Bob?
Well, I do a little bit.
Okay.
But there is a shortage of housing. There is a shortage of affordable housing. What's Kewaunee County going to do about that?
Well, there's a couple different things that we want to try to do to address this. Part of the issue is we have a lot of anecdotal information. We hear of retired couples that would like to move out of their house, but they have no apartments or condos to move into. We have other folks that want to take a job in Kewaunee County, but don't have a house or an apartment to move into. We have folks that are looking for an apartment, but they're all filled, and those that own apartment buildings don't even need to advertise really anymore because there's a waiting list. As well as what will happen is because there's fewer homes, the cost for those homes goes up dramatically, where a starter home these days is $250,000. And for some folks, that is just too high of a price for them to be able to become homeowners. So what the county wants to start to do is collect and gather that data, because the housing environment in Luxembourg is different than the housing environment in Kewaunee or Algoma or Casco, or as well as the townships. So what we'd like to do is have a housing study to help provide some of that information as to what the next steps would be. What is the issue? Why are developers not building more homes? Or why are they not building more homes in certain areas? What is the reason? How come it's been many years since an apartment building was constructed? What are all of those factors? In that same respect, what are consumers looking for? Are they looking for something within the city, or do they want their 10-acre plot out in the country? A number of those different factors and data needs to be collected, so that way as we move forward, we know what, if any, type of actions the county can do to help assist with that. Is the county going to do like some other municipalities have done, where they will buy property, put in the streets, sidewalks, and the utilities, and then sell those lots to developers to then build the homes? I'm not saying that the county should do that. All I'm saying is here are some different options that different governments have done, and part of the reason why this is important is I look at it from a long-term financial sustainability standpoint. We have a number of businesses here that are begging for workers. Okay, if they find the workers, where are those workers going to live? So to me, homes, which is very important, homes are workers. Homes are children into the school districts. Homes are customers for those restaurants and those retail businesses and those gas stations. So those additional homes will help to provide local governments and county governments and businesses with those needed people, whether they're customers, whether they're school kids, whether they're workers. All of those things are needed, and one of the common denominators for all of that is the need for more housing.
And security for families.
Correct,
too.
exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, well, the next time you come, I expect all of these problems will be resolved. Everything will be, back in good shape. And,
I expect that this will be done, and next we'll be talking about how the county will cure cancer.
That's great. We'll be looking forward to your next visit.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you very much. Our guest today has been Scott Feldt, who's the Kewaunee County Administrator. And that's going to do it for us today for another presentation of Your City, Your County. We hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you next time. For Your City, Your County, I'm Bob Gray. Have a good one. Bye-bye, everybody.